have had such a shift in my thinking, and I'm pretty excited about it. So I'm going to call this last part of the show tonight Freedom Activist, Science Nerd, Spiritual Truth Seeker Intersection. Like I said, I've had a major shift in my thinking. And as I was discussing with Ammon at the end, this chiropractor, neuroscientist named Dr. Joe Dispenza, just kind of fell out of the sky on me recently. And I can't even recall how I first stumbled on him. So I want to tell you a little bit about his story. As I mentioned, he was 23 years old, a chiropractor in Southern California. He's from back east, but had his practice there. And he was participating in a triathlon, so he's pretty darn fit. And he gets off the swim portion of it, gets on his bike, and as he's going, the police officer waves him on and either wasn't paying attention or the Ford Bronco wasn't paying attention. And so he got hit by the Bronco and run over. The driver was older and couldn't stop and ran him over, and he crushed at least 6 vertebrae. It may have been more, but 6. And the prognosis was not good. And he understood as a chiropractor that everything that these neurologists and orthopedic surgeons and trauma surgeons was saying to him, that you're going to need a steel rod in your back, a wheelchair, and a lifetime supply of pain medication. That was the prognosis. And everyone that he talked to said the same thing. Well, as a chiropractor, he understood that the body was designed to be self-healing. He said, how am I going to accomplish this? And so he decided to try it, and some friends put him up and took care of him since he couldn't take care of himself. And he said that was the hardest job he'd ever had because he had to control his thinking. You know, one part of him would say, okay, I know I can do this. I know my body can heal itself, and I'm going to let it do it. And the other part of him would go, yeah, but what if you wind up in a wheelchair? And so it was really hard to discipline his mind. But he was able to finally do that, and things started to happen. And within only about 9.5 weeks, he was walking again. And in 10.5 weeks, he was back to his chiropractic practice. And after that, I mean, he said for years afterwards, he's barely had any back pain whatsoever, hardly enough to even mention. He made a promise to himself that if this happened, that he was able to do it, that he would spend the rest of his life studying it. So as a matter of fact, he couldn't really relate to his friends, or his friends couldn't relate to him after this big healing that he'd experienced. So he ended up selling his practice in Southern California and moving up to the Pacific Northwest, where he opened a new practice and also started to go into taking university classes in neuroscience. And then he started studying quantum mechanics and actually proving what ancient writings have said. And he even went on to find people, and you're probably wondering, what does this got to do with freedom? Hold on, I'm getting there. Bear with me. Just laying a foundation here. And he even went on to studying people in 27 different countries who had had what they call spontaneous remissions. But when he studied them, they found out they weren't actually so spontaneous after all, and they'd all been based on a change in that person's thinking. They realized that if it was going to be, it was up to me sort of thing, and they changed their thinking. They saw they were able to have a moment of clarity and find out that this sickness in their body, and this goes for circumstances, were all created by their own thinking. So I've read several of Joe Dispenza's books so far. I watched a bunch of his lectures, and I recommend that you do the same. And you can go to his website, or you can go on YouTube, and his last name is spelled Dispenza. But the bottom line is, his bottom line is, we create or co-create with the Almighty, with Source, with Divine, with all that is, whatever you term it. It doesn't matter, and that pun is intended. What we're experiencing, we have created it with our thoughts. Okay, so in his books, you read about people that have totally reversed all kinds of massive ailments. And I want to tell you a fun story about his daughter when she was 15. She was, by his standard, just an excellent student of his at creating things. She created amazing things. She'd already created a #1 music video that she was in. She wanted it to be #1, and she created that, and it went to #1. So when somebody said to her, well, what are you going to do next? And she said, Dad, I want an unlimited shopping spree. And what was he going to say? He said, yeah, okay. He says, but you know what you got to do? And you've got to do it every day. And what he says, you got to, visualize it. And he has a meditation process that he's figured out scientifically how we get into this situation where we can co-create our reality. Some people she calls it prayer, whatever you want to call it. But the Bible says when we ask and pray, believe that we've received. That's one ancient writing on that. And so that's what she was able to do. And this went on all summer, and he'd do his meditation early in the morning or his time, and he'd wait, kind of listen for her to get up. And sometimes he wouldn't hear her get up. So he'd say, hey, come on, I did mine. Are you going to do yours? And so, summer ended. Well, one day he's in Washington, D.C. He's in a taxi cab on his way to a speaking engagement, and he gets a call from his daughter. And he can't tell whether she's laughing or crying. And she's finally able to say, that unlimited shopping spree? It happened today. And he said, tell me everything that happened and don't leave anything out. And so she told him, well, she was with her friend, and they were at their favorite store, and this was in Southern California. They were rifling through the racks as teenagers do. Actually, I do it the same way. You get a power shop, get through it fast. And a man came up to them and said to her friend, are you so-and-so's daughter? And she said, well, yes, I am. That's my dad. So, well, girls, come with me. And he took them behind the register into the back room. And he said, your dad did something really fabulous for me about 6 months ago. And I've been trying to figure out a way to repay him. Then he took out the company credit card and he handed it to them and said, have a nice afternoon. The first thing her dad said, how much? And she said, I spent $7,500. And so those are just one of those stories. There's so many of them. If you ever read Holographic Universe, which I recommend, you'll see there was a story about Mr. Wright. I remember his name because I'd heard the story when I was director of a cancer organization. And he was a pilot, so Mr. Wright made sense to me, so I remembered his name. He was in the last stages of lymphoma. He had lemon-sized tumors all over his body. They were pulling a quart of milky white fluid out of his lungs a day, days from death. And he kept begging the doctor to put him on this chemotherapy protocol, this experimental one. Well, the physician was resisting doing it because the protocol said that someone had to have at least 3 months to live. He didn't. And so finally, on a Friday afternoon, just to comfort a dying man, he said, okay, Mr. Wright, I'm going to give you the chemotherapy. So he gives him the injection, goes home, comes back on Monday morning expecting to see what he was already seeing. And Mr. Wright's up out of bed. And he says, Mr. Wright, how are you doing? He says, Doc, these tumors are melting like snowballs on a hot stove. He says, wow, that's amazing. And the doc knew that even aggressive radiation wouldn't do that to those tumors. And so within 10 days of getting that injection, he was discharged from the hospital. And he was back out flying his airplane at 10,000 foot elevation where you're supposed to use supplemental oxygen with no oxygen. That's how well he was. And then he heard that the FDA said that chemotherapy didn't work, and so all the tumors came back. So the doc saw this happen and was kind of heads up about it. So he made a big pantomime about saying, Mr. Wright, we found out what was wrong with that chemotherapy. We hadn't kept it refrigerated, so it lost its potency. I've got a super potent batch here. Do you want to go again? Oh, sure, doc. So he made a big pantomime out of giving him a shot of saline solution. And again, tumors melted like snowballs on a hot stove. He's out living his life. And then he hears that they've conclusively proven that drug is useless, and the tumors came back, and he died in a couple of days. So you can see our minds have a lot to do not with our health, but I think they create all our reality. So that got me thinking about the forces that are enslaving us and stealing our God-given freedoms, not just in America, but around the world. And rather than split hairs on whether it's the Vatican, the Masons, the Jews, the Archons, creating the enslavement and destroying the earth, Let's just call these sociopathic usurpers parasites. Okay, these parasites understand the principles of how fluid our reality really is and how to get us to create our own enslavement. And that's why they've made it their aim to control the media so thoroughly, because that's our brainwashing over and over again. That goes in, puts us in an alpha state of an alpha brainwave, and it goes directly into our subconscious mind. And just to remind everybody, the word government is actually from the Latin governo or gubernare, to control, and mente is mind. So it's mind control. That's what government is. I like another definition I find. Filthy liars, thieves, and murderers you love and trust to protect you. There are some really great images I found. One of them is the Republican elephant plus the Democrat donkey equals American sheep. Boy, if that isn't the truth. They don't care how much we know about what they're doing to us, and they especially like that we hate it. Because my research is showing that that energy reinforces it. Our brains are actually addicted to the chemical cocktail it receives from reading and researching all this stuff. That's why oftentimes people stay in destructive relationships. They're hooked on it. They're hooked on that chemical that they receive. So they know what they're doing and they're good at it. So I would really like to propose a grand experiment. If you're not driving, I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment and imagine what it would feel like truly being free. What would being free feel like? Can you do that for a moment? Well, I'm forming a group, and I hope it grows into millions. We will become the most efficient and effective creators of this new free reality. It's going to take effort. I mean, everything worth doing does. The only time success comes before work is in the dictionary, as a friend says. But in addition to creating liberty and justice for all, for America and the rest of the world, we'll also have an opportunity to be creating health, prosperity, and happiness for us on an individual level as well. I want to tell you some stories that gave me hope about this. When I read Dispenza's book, I finally understood prayer. I understood why it worked. I understood why the Bible said, double-minded man is unstable in all his ways and can expect nothing from the Lord. That's because when we flip on the switch to be faithful and to believe and to create that reality, that faith in imagining it, and because it says whatever, so when you pray and ask, believe that you've received it. You have to believe it and emotionally receive it and feel the joy and the happiness and the determination and the confidence to receive that. But when we that turns the switch on. But when we have doubts and we worry about things and we get angry about things, that flips the switch off. So it's like on, off, on, off. And so it never has a chance to arrive to us. That's what I'm learning from Joe Dispenza's book. I mentioned Blood River already in this interview, and it was absolutely a miracle. Not only did those South African Boers receive that victory, but later on, the Zulus that were fighting against them said that what frightened them the most was that they saw these huge white men on horses with big knives, they said, probably swords, coming over the mountains. Others saw these white men with arrows up in the sky shooting at them, and it was just an amazing thing. And there were no reinforcement. That was all a supernatural manifestation. Even though the Boers didn't see it, that veil was pulled open, and so the Zulus could see it. So and I'm only telling you these stories because I know you have some. I had a brand new Honda Civic. I was just maybe in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s, maybe 20, 21. And I was driving home from a concert in Boston. We'd gone to see the Chieftains, a friend and I dropped him off at his house, which was west of Boston. And I didn't want to drive through Boston late at night. It was always kind of nerve-wracking to me, drive through the city. So I decided to go out around on this road called 128. And it was very dark and a long road. And I knew I was having a problem staying awake, so I tried to tail this Trans Am. Well, Trans Am, Honda Civic, I couldn't keep up. And so I had the radio on, I had the window rolled down some. Well, the next thing I remember is that there was a hand, a right hand from a man's hand from the back seat that shook my right shoulder and woke me up. I woke up, I was 2 inches from the guardrail. I also know a friend of mine that used to go, a group of hikers along Monterey Bay, or along the cliffs there in Monterey. And they'd go, and there was an older lady. She was like 70, but a very fit 70, and she'd lead the hike. And they would pray before they went on the hike that they'd be protected, no one be hurt. And so one day, she's about 6 feet ahead of the group. She's leading a long line of people right along the edge of the cliff, and she slips, and she falls out over the cliff, and she's like parallel to the ocean. And the next thing you know, she's upright again. And she turns to the person behind her and says, "Thank you." And the person behind her said, "I didn't touch you. I wasn't even close enough." So there was some kind of angelic involvement there. So, there's endless near-death experience stories. Buddhists are known to, there's some monks that can manifest objects right in their hands. They have so got this down that they can manifest an object in their hand. Tonight I want to make an open invitation to anyone who wants freedom. Doesn't matter what your religion is, what your political party affiliation is. I don't care if you're a Fox News Republican. I don't care if you're a Tea Partier. I don't care if you're an anarchist. And none of those things interest me. I think this can work for everybody, and it has. This is what I want to do. I think, and we have to be sure and recruit children to help us. Because the sooner they understand how reality is created, they'll love to learn how to do it, and they'll be better at us than doing it. So what Joe Dispenza's work has said is that people need to spend time either first thing in the morning or last thing at night. And why that's important is because you're able to go through the different brain waves from beta to alpha to theta. Delta is deep sleep, but theta is where we're able to interact with this quantum universe that the Almighty has created, and where things are created from, by faith, by our intention. If that's another word for faith, intention. And so I don't want the Christians to get all freaked out and think I'm being too new agey, and I don't want the non-Christians to think, oh my gosh, she's being too Christian. So I'm trying to divide this out so everybody can see it applies to you. All right. That the time that we need to focus on this, and you can watch Joe's videos. There's even a couple of the meditations on there, a guided way to learn how to get deep into that part of your brain. That's the limbic system. That's an oldest part of our brain, not the neocortex where our conscious mind thinks, but a really deep part of us. Now, everybody knows, okay, everybody's had these experiences. I was meeting a friend, Don Wassel, by the way, who's been on the show and be on next week, and at the Scottish Festival. And we misconnected, long story. And I said, well, and he left his phone in the car, as he said he was going to do, even though he couldn't get a hold of me. So I said, well, I got an opportunity here to get all wound up about this, or I can just trust that my subconscious mind knows exactly where he is, because our subconscious minds know every face we've ever seen in a crowd. It knows it cold. It's connected to the source, to the Almighty, to the divine, whatever you want to call that, connected to that good, loving force. So I said, well, all right, I'm just going to believe that my subconscious mind knows where he is. I'll just go on with my day. And a subconscious mind, a lot of it is stored in our body, and that's pretty interesting. So I go on, I look at a couple things, and then I need to use the little girl's room. So I get to the porta potties, and I go, no, that's a no. And so I know further into the park are some brick and mortar restrooms. So I go over there. They're both in use, but I'm the only one waiting. So I'm standing there, just having a nice time. Okay, it's a beautiful day. Mid-April in Las Vegas is beautiful. There's still snow on the mountains. You got a beautiful view. Floyd Lamb State Park. Nothing to be upset about. the door opens to the ladies' room, and when someone comes out, and a lady swoops from somewhere behind me and tries to go in ahead of me. And I said, "Excuse me, I think I'm next." And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking." I'm looking at her like, talking to who? And she looks behind me, and I turn around, and Dawn is standing right there. You have to let this go. Just trust in it, be happy about it, and let it go. This happened again a couple weeks ago. I was picking someone up at the airport, and I went by 2 times to passenger pickup. He wasn't there. I said, well, maybe he went to the passenger departure side. So I went down there. I drove slow looking for him. No, couldn't find him. Go back up to passenger pickup again. And so I get to the end. I still can't find him. So I said, all right, I'm going to go into the terminal and get them to make an announcement, so-and-so meet your party kind of thing. And so I get out of the car and I go, okay, I can get frustrated about this, or my subconscious mind knows exactly where he is, so I'm not going to worry about it. So I walk out of the parking garage, across the road, across this bridge that goes into the terminal. I'm way on the end. And I happen to glance down, and he's sitting on a bench about 3 rows out, like where buses would drop off. And I yelled to him, "Hey, what are you doing down there?" There he was. Our subconscious minds are very, very powerful. But here's the problem with them. There's a gatekeeper between our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. And that gatekeeper wants to keep the status quo. It wants us to continue to believe everything that is in our subconscious mind, everything that's been programmed in there. However, if you can put that gatekeeper to sleep, you can make changes in the subconscious mind. And when the gatekeeper wakes up again, he's going to guard those beliefs just like he did the old ones. That's why it's important to change our minds. And you can see his books are all about that, how to change your mind, how to change your life. Let's see, what's another one over here? I've got 2 of them. Oh, Evolve Your Brain. You Are the Placebo. That's a great one. And he's developing this as he goes. And so that puts the gatekeeper is asleep for the first 90 minutes after you get up in the morning, after you wake up. So you can use that time, if you will, in this step-by-step instructions on how to do this, to really get in touch with what we want to see. What does freedom look like? What does it feel like? How will we feel when these parasites have been cleansed from our country and cleansed from our world, and we are back living the free life that the Creator intended us to have? What will that feel like? So that's the feeling that we want to have. And also, work on a couple other things. I mean, you need your health back. You have something you want to restore there. You need more finances, whatever. You can create it all then. The other good time is before you go to sleep at night. Again, when you're falling asleep, you're going back through these brainwave stages from beta to alpha to theta and then into delta. And so that's another optimal time. And then what we're going to have to do is really watch how we think. Because those thoughts, our brains, as I said, are addicted to those thoughts. And when Dr. Talmor was on the show, I think back when I was in Studio B, he came on, and he's a friend of mine, and he was saying that we can't get upset about these things. Oh, now I understand why he's saying that, because getting upset only reinforces it. So if we're going to continue to look at all the news, I mean, I must get 10 emails a day from some people with one ridiculous, oppressive, tyrannical story after another. And there's no shortage of them, and we can complain about geoengineering, about GMOs, about vaccines, about tyrannical government abuse, all these things that we know about. But we're going to have to discipline ourselves to be cool about it, to laugh about it, not get wound up behind it. Oh, and someone has just told me that talking about manifesting or receiving or allowing, tomorrow's a new moon. See, I said tonight, if anybody's going to pick up what I'm laying down here, it's going to be this woman that's Skyping me right now. And she gets it. So this is what we have to do. And I think I have a problem with the New Age. I think that most of the New Age thing is controlled heavily by the New World Order. I can prove that. And I can prove that because there are people from Hay House. I forget the first guy's name. He's into tapping, the tapping guy. And he said his greatest achievement so far was setting up a foundation for the parents who had lost children at Sandy Hook, because he lived in Newtown, Connecticut, and he knew how devastating that was. Well, I'm sorry, if you listen to Revolution Radio, by now you should figure it out that no one, not one child or not one teacher was killed at Sandy Hook. So you have people like supporting that. Wayne Dyer, same thing. He was saying, I heard him a year or so ago, and I turned it right off, saying that, oh, yes, he was working with one of the moms, and this had helped her so much. We've got to take a lot of this stuff with a grain of salt, but this is science that's proven. It's proven by EEGs. It's ancient wisdom that's come together and intersected here, and I believe nobody's really talking about this, about doing this as a group, as a society, to turn this around. And I believe this is what we need to do. A couple of years ago, I had a spiritually transformative experience. I used to be a reactionary Christian, okay? And I'd kind of gotten out of that a little bit, but I was still there. And then I had this spiritually transformative experience and just blew my doors off. Just about a 5-minute process changed me so thoroughly. All of a sudden, I was so expansive and knew, how things worked. It's been a challenging couple of years because I've been involved in a lawsuit, and I can see that I've let that spiritually transformative experience kind of wear off and gotten back into an old pattern. But this week, I've really changed that, and I want to encourage you, if nothing else this week, if you can, when you wake up, check out Joe Dispenza, but when you wake up, let's be in faith. Share the intent for the Hammonds that they are safe and protected and they are free, that they do not go to jail. They want to put them in jail for 5 years. It's completely corrupt, as you say, and that just see all that evil disappearing, dissipating, and them experience freedom. So let's do that. Let's support Ammon Bundy and his work there. Let's join in faith. Let's share their intention and whatever you want to call that, because I really feel like this is the answer for us as a nation, as a world. Because the more upset we get and the more angry we are, have you noticed that? Have you noticed that? That's the more people wake up to what's going on, Vatican, the Masons, the Jews, the whole cabal is working against us, the faster this seems to speed up. It's not just my imagination. I understand that this is what's going on. And it's because more people are waking up and we're intensifying our anger about this, that it's giving them this energy that they need to create this thing. So, Shelley, I'll be happy to post the link. I really hope people are feeling motivated and understand what we're trying to do here. Hey, and if you're not interested in freedom, well, I don't know, you're listening to freedomslips.com. You should be. And, yep, I knew Tara would be on this. Anger feeds them, and our angst about this and railing against them and thinking that we can do this. Well, if you're a Christian, anything we do in our own strength, God says is pride, and he resists the proud. And so we need to get to a place where we can see it happening, where we receive it and we can let go and just allow this to manifest. That's how manifesting, that's how prayer is answered. And even Joe Dispenza's daughter said, okay, now how'd you do that? He said to her. And she said, okay, when I pray, I believe that it's going to happen. And anytime I hear myself thinking, I wonder how it's going to come, I go, that's my conscious mind, and I just let it go and just believe that it's there. I think this is the way to go. So I appreciate the support there, Tara. Good job. Reclaiming our power gets to them. Yes, it does. And we are living so far beneath our power. They want us to think that we're just an accident that happened in the Big Bang Theory. We were part of an explosion, and that there's a bunch of gods or there's no gods in the huge universe, when no, that's not true at all. And that we are loved with an everlasting love. Just about every person that's had a near-death experience, the thing that overwhelmed them was the amount of love that they felt. That's love. So if we can be in touch with that and not worry and just really focus our intentions, and check out this Joe Dispenza guy. Continue to read your Bible, read the ancient writings. I think you'll agree that this is the way to go. So last night I had the opportunity to go to something called pranic healing. And I go, what's this? Well, again, it's just more energy work, and that's what they're doing. Because when we have a high energy, okay, when we have our cells are all turned on and the oscillation is high with these nuclear power stations in our body called chakras. I know Christians don't believe you have chakras, but you do. That we are lighter. We are closer to that spiritual position that we need to be in to create these things. But when we're depressed, when we're angry and upset, that slows down this vibration. We can't create. Read the books, Joe Dispenza. You can go to his site online. They do workshops. They do all kinds of stuff. People have been healed from like amazing, amazing things. Not just Joe, but all kinds of stories. I love reading the stories. And when they really do relate it to how they were thinking. And so if we're going to be honest, we've created this. And we have to take responsibility for it. A, we were asleep. We let it happen. We didn't stand up for it when we could have. So let's start creating what we really want, freedom. Let's see it, let's feel it, let's celebrate it, let's be disciplined about it, and make this happen.